excited to speak with you. And first, I just want to kind of get an idea about your background and just kind of understand where you are in life when you decided to go back or go get your PhD.
Yeah, so I grew up in upstate New York. I went to college at Northwestern in Boston. I've always kind of loved microbiology and research. I knew that I wanted to do research from the first time that I had an internship in a lab. It was a neuroscience lab. And then from there, I just kind of did lots of different research opportunities to narrow down like what kind of things I wanted to be answering with my PhD, and then applied from there.
Okay. So were you in your undergrad when you were applying?
Yes, so I was a senior when I was applying, or a junior and a senior.
Okay, yeah. Okay, perfect. And could you maybe give us an idea of what schools you applied to and kind of what your results were?
So I ended up applying to 5 schools, and I narrowed them down really very closely to what kind of professor I wanted to be working with based on the research that they did. So that was UC Santa Barbara, Northwestern, UConn, BU, and Princeton. I ended up accepting the Princeton offer. I got offers from UC Santa Barbara, Northwestern, and UConn, and I never ended up hearing back from BU.
Okay. Okay. So strange that they didn't even respond. So
Yeah, I think it was like a tentative thing, and then I had
okay.
decided on the other, so I let them know I withdrew my application.
Got it. Got it. So you basically applied to 5 places and got into 4 of those 5. That's awesome. Very cool. And so, what was it like before doing the Fearless Grad program? And, how do you feel now on the other side?
I definitely feel like I have a much better command of the process, and specifically like what I was looking for was the writing aspect of my application, writing my essays and everything like that, and narrowing down the schools. I think narrowing down the schools from a professional standpoint, I had a lot of help from like my mentors at Northeastern who worked in labs, and then from a personal standpoint, this program was very helpful because it allowed me to think about like where I actually wanted to live and like what type of life that I wanted to have.
Yeah, that's awesome because it's not just about like what looks good on paper, right? That's so true. So what does it feel like to kind of be accepted and, going to your dream school at Princeton?
Well, I don't exactly know because I haven't started yet, but it feels mostly exciting, a little bit intimidating, but I'm very excited to start, and then hopefully maybe I can give you a more specific answer that then I'm just very excited to start the research and start planning out my first year project.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just must be a huge relief, not being in limbo or you're right, like just kind of knowing that you're going to where you want. Is that
Yeah, I wanted to go to grad school for a long time, so having gotten any offers to grad school was very exciting.
super exciting? But what was your biggest fear before doing the Fearless Grad program? Like what was giving you that like stress ball in your stomach?
Um, Probably just not knowing too much about the application process, like what I should be including in my essays and what I shouldn't. I think that like the prompts and the guidelines for the applications are pretty vague, and some schools had really, really great like seminars that you could go to where they broke down kind of exactly what they were looking for in their application, but then others didn't. And so that's what I was most hesitant about, was figuring out what those schools that didn't tell you what they wanted, like what they wanted.
Okay. Okay. And so what do you think was the biggest benefit of doing the Fearless Grad program?
Probably having someone to like look at my essays and to talk things off of and to formulate ideas with and to review that aspect of it.
That's really cool. I like how you said formulate ideas because you can't edit something that doesn't have any meat to it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's you need that part of the process too. So why do you think you were so successful in getting multiple offers?
I'm not exactly sure. I think that like probably the thing that made my application strong was I did a lot of research on each professor before I talked to them. Like I probably read 10 papers per person I talked to, and then formatted like very specific emails to them. Maybe they were a little too lengthy, but I ended up getting responses. And then when I did end up having like those first conversations with a professor, it was mostly just like 1 hour conversation completely about their research. And I think that people tend to like that because then they know that you're really interested in what they're doing, and that like if you were to come work for them, you kind of already have ideas and you've thought really critically about the literature that they're really involved in their everyday life. And then like they love talking, like I love talking about nitrogen, they love talking about nitrogen, and it was fun.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I agree. I think being prepared is a huge benefit. Like, again, don't just show up to a call expecting that, oh, they'll just ramble. No, like you have to come prepared. And I think you did a really good job doing that. Okay. So how did you decide to invest in yourself to do this program? Because it is, an investment in yourself and your future.
Oh, well, I guess I see what you're saying. I think I figured that, well, I definitely wanted to go to grad school, and I didn't want to apply twice because it's laborious and stressful and expensive process. So I kind of felt like it would be saving some of those expenses in the long run if I really had like everything. If I know that I wanted to do it once, and I wanted to know that I did everything I could to get myself where I wanted to be the first time, so I didn't have to like pay those application fees again and spend all that time again that I could be using working. And so I kind of thought that like I just wanted to give myself every possibility and every perspective I could get on my first round of applications.
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Would you recommend the Fearless Grad program to others?
Yeah, I thought it was super helpful.
Yay. What would you tell yourself like a year ago? Like you a year ago who was stressed and worried, and what would you say?
Probably to calm down a little bit, and just that like things tend to work themselves out even if they hadn't. Like even if I hadn't got into programs, that I've kind of started to realize most people, when you're applying to PhD programs, you're pretty young, and that things work out in the long run. Yeah, probably that I should just worry about like the things that I can worry about in my application process. Like it makes sense to worry about your essays, and it makes sense to worry about meeting with people to the extent that you make sure you get it done, and that you make sure you work hard on it, and that you've done like all like I'm not upset that I spent many hours reading 10 research papers on everyone I reached out to, but I think that the useless worrying is probably not what is helpful.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Anything else you would, tell other people who are, in your shoes or the shoes you were in, where you're, going after your PhD, and kind of any advice you would give anyone?
I can just, yeah, I'm not sure how much of a place I am in to give advice, but the best advice that I got from other people, from other graduate students when I was applying, was to think a lot first about whether it was something I actually wanted to do. That was kind of the biggest advice I got from grad students. They were like, do you want to get a PhD? Which is probably because, they're in the midst of it. But I really am grateful that I was questioned on that decision so frequently, because I do have friends like who went through the application process, and then at the end of it, when they're confronted with like signing a paper, they're like, oh no, I don't want to. And so I'm glad that I was forced by like my mentors to think about that first before I started the application process. And then also that I think that applying to a PhD requires you to get out of the mindset when you're an undergrad, you kind of just learn from papers, and like you think of yourself as being outside of the literature and outside of the field. You could just like as an observer. But then when you apply to a PhD, there's like a big bout of imposter syndrome that comes with having to like make comments on literature and feel like you're more inside of it, because like you are now and you will be when you start graduate school. So thinking of yourself as someone who like actually has a valid opinion on the things that you're reading, because you do, even if you convince yourself that you don't.
No, that is really salient, and I hadn't really articulated it that way. But yeah, it's like, yeah, you feel intimidated, like the wall, and then the wall starts crumbling, and you're like, oh, I'm over here. And like, yeah, you definitely should.